studios in New York City, this is Maria Bartiromo's Wall Street.
And happy weekend to all. Welcome to the program that analyzes the week that was and helps position you for the week ahead. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Thanks for joining us. An unprecedented guilty verdict, not slowing down former President Donald Trump. He's already back on the campaign trail, fundraising just hours after the 6-week trial and warning President Biden's team to buckle up.
We're going to be appealing this scam because the people of our country know it's a hoax. They know it's a hoax. They get it. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. The only way they think they can win this election is by doing exactly what they're doing right now, win it in the courts because they can't win it at the ballot box.
Trump's sentencing has been set for July 11th. That's just 4 days before the RNC convention, where Republicans will officially nominate Trump as the GOP presidential candidate. His team now has until June 13th to appeal the verdict. Democrats are celebrating what they're considering a win ahead of the election.
It says great things about the fact that justice is indeed blind. It is blind to the fact that you're president. It is blind to the fact that you're a bully.
Of course you feel some human sadness, but I have to say that I also felt a sense of pride in the rule of law.
From here on in, the other side has the ability to take the great brander and brand him in the most simplistic term, convicted felon.
But for many, this guilty verdict is unifying, a rally call for his base. Here's what voters are saying.
They're making our country look like a freak show. I mean, this is not what our judiciary branch is supposed to be doing. This is ridiculous.
Kind of blows my mind. Can you say banana republic?
I think it's a complete failure of our justice system.
You got to have a little dirt on you for people to trust you.
They think they can get Donald Trump not to run for president or not be able to run for president. Not going to happen. He's got my vote.
Joining me now with reaction is Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Congresswoman, thanks very much for joining us this weekend. Your reaction to all of this?
Oh, man, Maria, this is historic, and I think it's going to deliver a historic win for Donald J. Trump in November. Not only is the base now incredibly fired up, but you see everyday Americans who, listen, maybe they're not hyper political. Maybe they just are busy raising a family, working, going back and forth from home to work and back again. And they're just trying to raise their families. But they're seeing this on every single station, and they're seeing the celebration of the liberal left. And they're saying, wait a minute, I'm not going to be lectured to by a bunch of people, a bunch of elitists who say that, oh, everyone is subject to the law, that no one is above the law. Meanwhile, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, has tried to cut a deal for his son with the DOJ, who couldn't be pursued under charges for storing confidential and classified documents in his garage because he's a doddering old man. I mean, give me a break. The double standard is insane. It is blatant. And I think the American people see this for what it is, a total sham. We will prevail. People are mad. They are fired up. And if they can do this to Donald Trump, they can do it to any one of us. This is weaponization and lawfare at its peak.
Meanwhile, Congresswoman, Wall Street billionaires are rushing to support Trump. What are you seeing in terms of the reaction from voters as a result of this verdict? Is it empowering them, getting them to stand up, or are they saying, well, I can't back someone who is now officially a convicted felon?
No, I think everyday Americans really believe that what has happened to Donald Trump and these 91 counts, they see this as a total sham, as a political witch hunt. They see how Alvin Bragg immediately raised $150,000 on the heels of his announcement of going after Trump. Heck, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, all of these individuals made campaign promises that they were going to go after Donald Trump. No one's actually believing that this is about justice. This has been about revenge, and they know that they can't beat us at the ballot box. So they're having to weaponize the DOJ and our legal system in order to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. I think that the fact that you have people from all walks of life now coming to the table saying we're supporting Donald Trump. And again, you can go to donaldjtrump.com, donate to him, because we need to make sure he wins in November. We see what is happening. The middle class, fixed income, working class Americans, they're under assault under Biden's policies. We can't sustain this. Wall Street knows this. Everyday America knows this. Main Street knows this. The world knows this.
Wow.
We have an economic financial cliff that is coming. And if we don't get Donald Trump back in the White House, I fear that it's something we can't come back from.
Meanwhile, the Biden campaign is going all in on the campaign trail, touting Joe Biden's big spending agenda. The White House is sounding the alarm over an impending inflation bomb from Republicans if the Trump-era tax cuts are extended, sending out a memo warning that a Trump economic agenda would raise costs for middle-class families. Congresswoman, no mention of the fact that because of the Democrat spending and Biden policies, inflation went all the way up to a 40-year high, and we're still feeling it.
Absolutely. I mean, think about this. We don't have a fiscal cliff coming. We have Mount Everest coming. I wouldn't even say it's the Super Bowl. This is the Olympics. This is bigger than the Olympics. We have a debt ceiling set to expire in the beginning of January next year. We have the expiration of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which, by the way, that gave a tax break to virtually every tax bracket, expanded the child tax credit, doubled the standard deduction. Businesses were able to invest long term in those capital investments and have some certainty. And of course, let's not forget that he took on the regulatory regime, not just doing a 2-for-1 cut on regulations, which was stifling the economy, but they were at some points going 17-1 in cutting regulations to put one on the books. Of course, no one's talking about the $10 trillion in U.S. treasuries that has to be refinanced, or all of the regulatory rules that are going to be put on the books in January of next year that have come under the Biden administration. This is a disaster if these tax cuts expire. This means financial and economic ruin for the United States. If this isn't a massive call as to one more reason why we need Donald Trump back in the White House, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's incredible because critics are now saying who would buy a treasury bond from a banana republic? I mean, they're looking at what has just taken place in a Manhattan courtroom and saying, wait a minute, do we really want to be buying treasury bonds now in the face of what is taking place with this political persecution? President Biden, meanwhile, reportedly close to signing an executive order on the border. According to the Associated Press, it could come as early as this Tuesday. The action expected to limit asylum requests and entry to migrants at 4,000 a day. For reference, in April, there were over 8,000 migrant encounters a day, not including the gotaways, Congresswoman. So, Joe Biden, on top of his DOJ convicting Donald Trump, now he's going all in on lots of Donald Trump policies to try to make it look like he actually recognizes the impact of a wide open border. Does he?
I think they see it as the political liability that it has become for them because Republicans and everyday Americans, we've been shouting from the rooftops that Joe Biden's open border policies have turned every state and every city in America into a border town. You can't let 10.8 million illegals into the country, have over 2 million gotaways, work in blue cities and states to strip citizenship as a voting requirement. And of course, we've seen the impacts through crime and violent crime, especially, and the drugs that have killed over 100,000 Americans every single year as a result of the open border policy. They see this as the political liability it is. But they have been trying to have their cake and eat it too. They can't have it both ways. You can't claim that you care about everyday Americans while you have an open border. And don't forget, these were the same people under Alejandro Mayorkas and Joe Biden that said that we don't have a crisis. And they were quick to brag about the 61 executive orders that they undid to open up those borders after Trump secured them. This is going to be a major political liability. They think the American people are dumb. We are not. We are paying attention. We're wide awake, and we know what they're doing, playing political games with people's lives.
Kat Kamak joining us this weekend. We so appreciate your time. We will see you soon. Thank you. Quick break, and then the Federal Reserve's favorite inflation gauge shows price increases remain sticky and elevated. Crossmark Global Investments' Bob Dahl will join me on what it means for investors and your money next. Welcome back. Here's a look where markets ended the week after first quarter GDP was revised lower to show growth of 1.3%. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge came in at 2.7% annually and up 0.3 of a percentage point from the previous month. That's unchanged from March's reading and in line with expectations, but again, still elevated. Stocks ended the month of May on a high note, though, with the Nasdaq soaring to all-time highs. this past week. Joining me now, Crossmark Global Investment CEO and CIO, Bob Dahl. Bob, great to see you. Assess where we are in this market, knowing the backdrop and what's ahead.
Well, remember at the beginning of the year, Maria, the expectation was double-digit earnings growth. Inflation was going to come down to 2. The Fed was going to cut 6 times. That's a beautiful scenario. But that has not been what's transpired. Yeah, earnings have been fine, but inflation's remained sticky. You just covered it. The Fed wants 2, and let's round it currently 3. And somebody said to me recently, is there a big difference between 2 and 3? I said, well, not really. It's only 1 point, unless you expected 2. Stocks do not belong at 21 times earnings if inflation's going to be 3 instead of 2. And I guess what else I'd say is the breadth has just not been there. S&P 500 is up 10% year to date, Maria, but almost half the stocks are down year to date.
So do you want to sell into any rally then, Bob?
Yeah, I'm cautious. The best of both worlds, double-digit earnings growth, and the Fed's going to cut, inflation's coming down. I really don't believe either side of that. And for all that to repeat, you're paying over 20 times earnings. So I'm on the cautious side. Rallies, I'm a trimmer. If we get a pullback like we got a month or so ago, you can put some money back. I don't think you have to run for the hills, but I think you can be very price sensitive and expect a choppy market.
Bob, how much of the news around President Trump is important to markets? I've got lots of commentary from Wall Street billionaires who say they're going to back Trump now. Is Wall Street and markets focused on what has taken place after President Trump was convicted?
Yeah, I think, Maria, the markets like to know certainty. They don't like uncertainty. And this obviously just raises the uncertainty a bit. And so it's not necessarily favorable. Look, Wall Street tends to pay attention to elections post-Labor Day. We got a long way to go and a lot of entertainment between now and then.
Yeah, okay. Well, what about this rally that we saw this week? The NASDAQ shooting up to above 17,000, an all-time high this week. And once again, it was largely due to artificial intelligence, big rally in NVIDIA. Do you want to buy into that now, or would you sell those stocks?
I would own them. If I didn't, I would buy some, but I'm underweight them. NVIDIA is a perfect example. I own a bunch of NVIDIA, but I'm below my benchmark weight, if you will. So on down days, I say, should I buy some more? Look, these stocks have gone through the roof for good reason. AI is real. It's legitimate. But is it hyped a little too much? Perhaps. Time will tell. And in technology in general this past week, we started to see some fraying in the earnings. Software, Salesforce, for example, and some other names that the tech story is not all green lights.
Yeah, great point. Do you expect a recession? A lot of people talking about a bifurcated economy right now. The upper end is doing well, but not so for the rest of us.
Exactly. And I think what we're seeing in those consumer confidence surveys, University of Michigan a couple of weeks ago, the high-end consumers are doing fine. Low-end are struggling. And now middle-income Americans are beginning to struggle. That was the big difference in the University of Michigan survey that got my attention. And you're starting to see that struggle. The economy is slowing. There's no question about it. How slow it will get will determine do we have a recession or not. Look, I don't think we've repealed recession from our vocabulary. We still have that inverted yield curve. We still have interest rates that are high compared to recent history. I think the lagged effects of the Fed rate hikes, believe it or not, are still in part to be felt. I think we'll see that in the back half of the year as the economy slows, Maria.
I think I agree with you because 11 rate hikes is what the Fed put into motion. And many people feel we haven't actually felt the true impact just yet. So we'll be watching the rest of the year. Bob, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks so much.
All the best.
Bob Dahl joining us. Meanwhile, French fry inflation crushing consumers, but McDonald's new menu discounts could crush franchise owners. We'll be speaking with one of them next.
I've definitely noticed in the past 5 years how the prices have skyrocketed.
I'm basically bringing my lunch every day.
The prices are ridiculous. Now a meal at McDonald's is like almost $20.
Welcome back. Prices at the Golden Arches and other chains are too rich these days. A new survey finding nearly 80% of Americans now view fast food as a luxury amid sky-high inflation. McDonald's in particular under the microscope for their price hikes over the years. McDonald's president admitting that Big Mac prices have surged more than 20% since 2019. But the fast food giant is also trying to entice Americans back to their restaurants, gearing up for a month-long special offering, some menu items for $5. Many franchisees are not loving it, arguing the deal cuts into already thin margins. Stores in California, for example, getting hit particularly hard with the state's fast food minimum wage increase now in its second month. Joining me right now is one of them. McDonald's franchisee owner Scott Roderick is with us. He owns and operates 18 franchises in Northern California. Scott, great to have you this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
How's business, and give us a sense of the impact of inflation?
Well, Maria, inflation has had a devastating effect on Californians. Its impact can be felt on both sides of my front counter. Obviously, from the consumer standpoint in California, they see inflation happening at the gas pump with groceries, rent, utilities, getting insurance, and of course, even dining out. And on my side of the front counter, the extraordinary $20 wage increase in April of this year is the biggest inflation driver of them all. And of course, there are halo effects on that, including the payroll tax implications and workmen's compensation taxes. And the impact of inflation in my restaurant business is not just the 25% wage increase. There's a steep trend line up for all of my backdoor food and paper costs. Access to capital is a challenge. The cost of capital, you mentioned in the last segment about the 11 rate hikes that the Fed has executed. Well, at one point, you could borrow money to start or grow your business at 3 or 4%. Now, franchisees are looking at 8, 9, 10% to grow their business. So when you add that on top of the relentless drumbeat of government regulation that chokes the oxygen out of small business, we've got a problem in the state of California.
So what are you doing about it, Scott? Have you been forced to raise prices? How do you square that circle?
Well, in terms of raising prices, walking through this inflation minefield has to be done gingerly. I can't charge $25 for a Happy Meal. I have to be thoughtful about my approach. And you mentioned the national $5 meal deal offer, which is being launched next month nationally at McDonald's. That's going to jumpstart a summer value campaign. My restaurants have always been a leader in providing value for our customers. It's part of my franchised DNA for 70 years. I've been in this business for 30. My family's been in this McDonald's business for 50 years, if you can believe it. Obviously, the sustainability of this $5 campaign is all about driving incremental visits versus trade-off, essentially growing the baseline and winning market share, which is critical to surviving that 25% overnight increase in the California minimum wage. And so if you're looking at, what's driving inflation on my side of the counter, of course, it is the cost of labor, the cost of entry-level labor. We're in the people business. We just so happen to sell hamburgers. And so the idea of cutting hours, cutting shifts, that for my business is not sustainable. People are my greatest asset in my company. So I'm looking at trying to identify other costs to survive this unprecedented legislation.
Unbelievable. Scott, great to have you. Thanks very much. We'll be watching.
Thank you, Maria.
All right. Scott Roderick joining me. I've got one important thing you need to know about ahead of next week. That's next. Welcome back. One thing you need to know about ahead of next week, the world's largest chip maker gearing up for the Computex 2024 AI Summit coming up on Wednesday. Ahead of the big event, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is delivering a keynote in Taiwan where he will share how the company's technology is ushering in a new industrial revolution. The summit could be a big market mover. NVIDIA currently ranked as the third highest valued company on the NASDAQ. The stock closing at an all-time high earlier this week. week. NVIDIA and MediaTek are expected to announce a new AI chip for computers and iPhones at this upcoming event. We'll be following it all day, every day this week on Mornings with Maria, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. Don't forget to join us weekdays on Fox Business. I hope you'll join us. And then I'll see you on Sunday over on the Fox News Channel at 10 a.m. Eastern this Sunday live for Sunday Morning Futures. I've got exclusive interviews this weekend with Trump Organization Executive Vice President and President Trump's son, Eric Trump, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, former White House Senior Advisor Stephen Miller, and former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe. It's all coming up live Sunday on Fox News. Join us there for Sunday Morning Futures. And that'll do it for us here on Fox Business. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a great rest of the weekend, and I'll see you again next time.